The historians Stanley Elkins and Mike McKitrick note that, in the conventional diplomatic terms, as a piece of adversary bargaining, J got much of the worst of the bargain. Such a view has to a great degree persisted ever since. They conclude that although J did not succeed in asserting neutral rights, he did obtain his other sine qua nons. He got none of the things that were desirable, but not indispensable. They add, J's record on the soft was open to many objections on the hard side. It was a substantial success which included the prevention of war with Great Britain. The historian Marshall Smelser argues the treaty effectively postponed war with Britain, or at least postponed it until the United States was strong enough to handle it. Bradford Perkins argued in 1955 that the treaty was the first to establish a special relationship with Britain and the United States, with a second installment under Lord Salisbury. In this view, his treaty worked for 10 years to secure peace between Britain and America. The decade may be characterized as the period of the first rapprochement. As Perkins concludes, for about 10 years there was peace on the frontier, joint recognition of the value of commercial intercourse, and even by comparison with both preceding and succeeding epochs, a muting of strife over ship seizures and impressment. Two controversies with France pushed the English-speaking powers even more closely together. Starting at Swords Point in 1794, the Jay Treaty reversed the tensions, Perkins concludes. Through a decade of world war and peace, successive governments on both sides of the Atlantic were able to bring about and preserve a cordiality which often approached genuine friendship. Perkins suggests that, saving perhaps the opening of trade with British India, in quotes, Jay did not fail to win anything the Americans were not obviously entitled to. Liberation of territory recognized as theirs since 1782, and compensation for seizures that even Britain admitted were legal. End quote. He also speculates that, in quotes, more astute negotiator than the Chief Justice, end quote, would have gotten better terms than he did. He quoted the opinion of the great historian Henry Adams that the treaty was a bad one. Here's the quote. No one would venture on its merits to defend it now. There has been no time since 1810 when the United States would not prefer war to peace on such terms. End quote. Perkins gave more weight than other historians to valuable concessions regarding trade in India and the concessions on the West Indies trade. In addition, Perkins noted that the Royal Navy treated American commerce with relative leniency during the wars, and many impressed seamen were returned to America. As Spain assessed the informal British-American alliance, it softened its previous opposition to the United States. Use of the Mississippi River and the Pinckney's Treaty with the Americans wanted, which the Americans wanted. When Jefferson took office, he gained renewal of the commercial articles that had greatly benefited American shipping. Elkins and McKitrick find this more positive view open to one big difficulty. It requires that the British negotiated in the same spirit. Period. Unlike Perkins, they find little indication of this, preferring to view the British not as future-oriented, but having had no indication that the United States required attention, wishing to take it off the long list of issues that did. George Herring's 2008 history of U.S. foreign policy says that, in 1794, in quotes, the United States and Britain edged toward war, end quote, and concludes, in quotes, the Jay Treaty brought the United States important concessions and served its interests well. Joseph Ellis finds the terms of the treaty one-sided in Britain's favor, but asserts, with a consensus of historians, that it was a shrewd bargain for the United States. It bet, in effect, on England rather than France as the hegemonic European power of the future, which proved prophetic. It recognized the massive dependence of the American economy on trade with England. In a sense, it was a precocious preview of the Monroe Doctrine, 1823, for it linked American security with economic development to the British fleet, which provided a protective shield of incalculable value throughout the 19th century. Mostly, it postponed war with England until America was economically and politically more capable of fighting one.